Right, so we've got the stories, most powerful memories that they wrote at home, we've got the emotional projection, we've got the spatial analysis, right? So you can see how we're starting to now to get we've got a lot of information. We're a couple of hours into the group here, by the way, and we're getting a lot of information, as you can see. There's a lot of analysis to do, but it's rich, right? It's rich. You'll be very, very happy with the information that you get out of this process. Now, the other thing we'd like to do is what we call the morality. We want a morality tale about the brand or about the product, whatever the question, whatever the issue is, right? We want them to write a story about the product or the brand that has to be intelligible to a 5-year-old from another planet, right? So someone who doesn't know anything about this thing, and they're also 5 years of age or 6 years of age or whatever, so they can only understand very basic, simple, emotional language. So we get the respondent to actually paint what I call the emotional morality tale. Now, let's think about what is a morality tale. Now, when I use the word morality, I don't mean like morals as in judgment of morals. I mean understanding the cultural role that a brand or a product plays in our life, because every story, every good story has a moral. Every good brand has a moral, if you like. So the moral codes are very important. So for example, and again, this is completely hypothetical, right? This is not because I've done any work on these, but things like Vegemite, right? Old brand like a Vegemite or a Bushell's tea in Australia, or an Arnott's biscuits in Australia, right? These are not just brands that have existed for a long time. I mean, these actually have a moral tale. Okay, because they are an important part of the Australian culture. So we've got to understand basically what that moral tale is. Just think recently how the Deputy Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, well, now may have been late last year, she spoke about Vegemite. Right? She spoke, as a politician, she used the Vegemite brand in order to convey something about the morality of Australia. Right? So the brand, especially old brands, have a moral to their story. You know? Now, there's a guy called Rapai, which I've talked about in another section or earlier on, and he calls this a cultural code. Now, I subscribe to what he does, Rapai, a lot. So, and I agree with his cultural code, but I think it's not always cultural. This is maybe the mistake that he makes. It's not always a cultural code. Sometimes it's just about a moral code which goes beyond a particular culture. Right? So the moral code is very, very important. So just to give you an example, there's a moral code behind Vegemite. Now, what the hell are you talking about? I can hear you say. So let's say, for example, that the moral expectation 50 years ago was that, as a mother was judged on her mothering skills as a mother, as a person, by the red rosy cheeks of her children. So the appearance of her children reflected on the mother, right? And that was actually a moral tale, and Vegemite associated itself with that moral tale because, it used to be puts a rose in every cheek. Very, very successful advertising campaign, by the way, very simple and very, very successful, because it wasn't just about, it makes the kids healthy. There was a bigger implication at play here. It was the moral tale that, Mum, if you buy Vegemite for your children, that means that, your children are going to have red rosy cheeks, because the implicit meaning was that the Vegemite is good for them, and therefore you will come off looking like a very successful mother. Now, that was a moral tale that existed 50 or 40 years ago or whatever. That moral tale, you can't sell that moral tale to mothers anymore, right? You will be dismissed as some kind of sort of patriarchal dinosaur if you try and say something like that nowadays. So you've got to find the moral code that is relevant for basically today's society. So the way that we get to the moral code is, and who are moral tales actually designed for? They're designed for children. All the fairy tales have a morality to them, there's a moral code to them, and they're designed for children. So therefore, that's why we get the participant in the group to write a story about the brand to a child. That's where the moral structure of the brand will come out, and it can yield some very, very important and surprising results.